Hi, guys. Hope you're having a great evening. It's Fred and Sheila with Hatfield McCoy Museum and Adventures, or FS Investigates.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. You can look at the background there once again. Sheila and I, we've got an important message towards the end of the video, probably, or
Okay.
maybe some news to some of you, may be interesting to you. Sheila and I was reviewing some things and making some notes. And as we're going through, well, we was going through Doug Asher's book, and then we're going through the report from Detective William Stewart, his uniform offense report of Johnny's death, homicide. And while we were doing that, we was asking several questions were coming up. And we have gone over Asher's book, the first or second, probably the first video we ever did on Johnny Edrington.
Mm-hmm.
And we've made reference to it many times during some of our videos. I don't know how many videos we've made now on Johnny E. Somebody said the other day that over 30 videos. I don't know if that's correct or not. It don't seem like that many, but if there is, there is. A person should be able to take all the videos that Sheila and I have made and look at some of the questions and just things that we've found out, things that we've proven with facts, with documentation or other. And what we want to do here is we're going to go over Doug Asher's, it's five, 6 pages of his book, and it's called The Big Gray Coverup, The True Facts Behind the Death Investigation of Trooper Johnny Edrington. Now, right there in that title, I can tell you that that's misleading. The true facts behind the death investigation, because we have found discrepancy after discrepancy after discrepancy with Mr. Asher's book, with this chapter and the chapter on Mark Putnam, but that's not what this is about. This is only about Johnny Edrington's death, Kentucky State Trooper Johnny Edrington's death. And we're just going to go over it real slow, maybe a long video. Again, Sheila and I was doing some reviewing for a certain purpose, and we'll discuss that purpose at the end of this video, because the next video coming up may be one of the most interesting ones that we've done. But guys, if you would follow along, you CSI people, and help us. If you see something that you catch on to that we've missed, or that we state wrong, or it could be a different way, tell us.
Yes, we would appreciate that very much.
I'm retired, and we've gotten old. Doesn't mean we're not trying. And with your all's help and the good Lord, all of us, we're gonna figure this out. But let's just go over real slow some of Doug Asher's book and see if it causes concern to you, or if it causes questions, or like it does to Sheila and I when we discuss it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to read the entire thing. I'm just going to read some. In late December 1988, Trooper Edrington was found dead next to his cruiser in Laurel County, 2.4 miles east of the Pulaski County line on Kentucky 80. Sheila and I have now put a cross up there where Johnny Edrington, in the vicinity right there, should be right close to where Johnny was murdered on December the 20th, 1988.
Yep.
Somewhere between 11:30 and 12 o'clock, somewhere between where his shift ended at 12 o'clock midnight. He didn't report in. They didn't miss him till 1 o'clock in the morning or something, according to the other report. But we're not on that. We're on Doug Asher's book. He was shot with his own revolver one time in the head. Several seasoned and experienced investigators were assigned to the case. It was the unanimous decision of all those investigators, as well as the county coroner and assistant state medical examiner, that Trooper Edrington's gunshot wound was self-inflicted. This is page 207. This is in the second paragraph. He's done in the title, says the true facts behind the death investigation. And let's just take this line by line here. It was the unanimous decision of all those investigators that it was self-inflicted. Well, he says in here in a minute, and I'll probably cover it again, and Sheila will post it at the end of the video or somewhere in here.
Okay.
Unanimous decision. Well, the investigators was Detective Wilm Stewart, unit number 84.
Okay.
Larry Lewis, detective, and Detective Johnny Phelps. That's the three that he's talking about. That's the three detectives, the investigators. The lead detective, the one that was responsible for the case, the one that actually filled out
The report.
the case report, the uniform offense report, right there at the bottom, is Wilm Stewart. Now, he says Wilm Stewart was one of the ones that was unanimous that it was self-inflicted right here at the top, and Sheila will post that for you, but it should say homicide or murder.
Mm-hmm.
The title of the investigation is Murder, Kentucky State Police, Murder,
Mm-hmm.
Capital Offense, Felony, 507.020.
Yep.
Google, Kentucky Revised Statute, 507.020, and it'll tell you the definition of what he's looking for there. See, Doug Asher says in his book, Captain Doug Asher says that it was unanimous. Well, it's not unanimous because this is the lead investigator, the one that done the offense report. He's calling it murder.
Mm-hmm.
He called it a homicide. So that's incorrect. So up here where it says the true facts behind the death investigation, he's right about the Big Gray Coverup. It's definitely a cover-up. It's a cover-up as far as the part that these guys that's saying that it was a S side didn't go to no other agencies that we know of, that we can find.
Right.
No news
Right.
media, nobody did they go to other than write a book 35 years later and claim it was a cover-up. And we discussed that in the last video about insurance and all that, and we'll leave it at that. But let's go on here.
Okay.
And he says that it was unanimous decision of all those investigators. Well, we know that's not true. At least Wilm Stewart didn't agree with it. We haven't talked to Larry Lewis. We'd like to. We've talked to some of the troopers that's on those pictures in the newspaper back then, standing out on the road, and
Mm-hmm.
different people that was there.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that's not unanimous. But he goes on, he says, as well as the county coroner and assistant state medical examiner, that Trooper Edrington's gunshot wound was self-inflicted. Guys, Sheila's going to add a newspaper article in here, and we're going to go over it again here in a minute, because he even puts the date on here. Mm-hmm. He even says through here that the state medical examiner, at the conclusion of his test, mm-hmm. Dr. John Huntsinker, at the conclusion of the procedure of the autopsy, it was Dr. Huntsinker's conclusion that Edrington's wound was self-inflicted. So she's going to, right now, you should be reading a newspaper article, January the 6th, 1989, some 17 days later. Mm-hmm. This is way after the autopsy. He says at the conclusion of the procedure. At the conclusion of the autopsy, it was Dr. Huntsinker's conclusion that Edrington's wound was self-inflicted. Well, Johnny was killed on the 20th of December, and at 10 o'clock the next morning, on the 21st, did I say September, baby, or December? He was killed on the 20th of December, 1988. And on the next morning at 10 o'clock, on the 21st of December, Dr. John Huntsinker performed an autopsy at the University of Kentucky Medical Center on Johnny Edrington's remains. Now, here in this book, he says it's unanimous between the detectives. He said it was unanimous between the coroner and Dr. Huntsinker. Self-inflicted. This was December 21st. Article there in the Lexington Herald Leader, and it's in other papers too, but January the 6th, 17 days after the autopsy, Dr. Huntsinker says, I have told nobody. I have never told nobody this was a suicide. In fact, he tells Lee Searcy last year in the news interview that he done, he said when he first done the autopsy that he ruled it undetermined. Undetermined, which is what a young medical examiner with not a lot of experience and couldn't figure it out, that would be the proper thing to have ruled. You would never want to rule somebody a suicide if there's even a chance that it wasn't, without having a video, a note, a witness. You wouldn't want to slander, libel, treat somebody that bad. You wouldn't want to be treated like that. So most people don't do that.
You wouldn't want to hurt the family.
Yeah. You've got a family to think about besides the man's reputation. But let's go on. Now, we're going to come back to that in a minute, because by now she has posted the newspaper article where Huntsinker says, 17 days later, he says, I've never told nobody this was a S side.
Right.
That's his own, that's in the newspaper.
It's his own statement, yeah.
Even on the TV interview 35 years later, he says that he ruled it undetermined. Now, he never did rule it any other way. He ruled it undetermined. Just remember that, because we're going to discuss that here in a minute from Asher's book. He never ruled it no other way. The only thing he ever ruled it was undetermined, because later on it was taken over by the state medical examiner, Dr. David Jones, and the chief medical examiner, Dr. George Nichols, after the famous
Vincent DeMayo,
another medical examiner. These guys has done 10,000, 20,000 autopsies at that time. They were more seasoned. They were more experienced. Experience counts for a lot of things in life. You get better as it goes along. I wish Dr. Huntsinker, somebody could put Johnny's body in front of him right now and say, let's start over, without the bullet that was taken out at the funeral home and several different things. And I believe that he may be able to determine then instead of undetermined. But see, Asher puts in his book, like later on it was ruled like Huntsinker had ruled it a S side. Huntsinker never ruled it an S side. Never, at no time did he ever say in a report or anything that we have seen, we've been privy to, other than undetermined. We know what Asher says in his 5 pages of this chapter, and he says so many things that are provable wrong, easy to prove wrong, and have been proven wrong. And I would say that one day will be proven wrong in a court of law. If the family, let's go on. Let's just discuss the book. So he says the 3 detectives, we know they didn't. Some people says, Fred, you repeat everything. I repeat it because I want you to understand. Listen what Doug Asher writes and listen to the truth of these reports when a man marks a case a homicide, a murder,
Hmm.
and he says in here that it was unanimous. It's not unanimous. He says the coroner ruled it self-inflicted. He did not. He ruled it undetermined. He goes on, he says that the county, as well as the county coroner, guys, I'm going to tell you something. Back in those days, back in the 80s, 70s, well, 60s, 70s, 80s,
Mm-hmm.
the county coroner, just like today, is an elected position. One thing David Jones and Dr. George Nichols did do when they took over Kentucky's medical examination department, the ME's office,
Mm-hmm.
they started having classes for coroners. Coroners are elected positions. It's about like a constable here in Kentucky. Constables is an elected position, a law enforcement position. They're limited on what they can do, but they can carry a badge and a gun. And throughout the years, 40 years that I was a police officer, I found more corrupt than good ones. They use that badge and that car and that influence for other things. It doesn't pay anything. It's just a position. Now, the coroner's position is a very important position. We've discussed that. Back in the day, a coroner was usually your local funeral director, funeral homes. And he would come in a hearse and pick up the body. And again, if there was a gun laying there, they'd say, well, it must be a S side. If there was a gunshot, no gun, must be a homicide. If there was a bunch of pills or something laying around, must be an overdose. If the guy grabbed his chest before he fell over, must be a heart attack. I asked the family, what, did he have any medical conditions? Yeah, he had sugar, he had this, okay, must be natural causes.
So they were going by what they'd seen at the time.
He's laying down here off of a roof. What happened? Well, he's putting a roof on the house and he fell off. Well, accident. He fell off the roof. And that's what coroners went on. Since Dr. George Nichols and Dr. David Jones, they get training, they get certification. It's a whole lot better. So when Doug Asher says here in the 80s, and I could be wrong, I don't know Ed Bolin, and he's deceased now. I think his son, Doug Bolin, is now the coroner, still yet in London, Loyal County, and that's great. But he wasn't the coroner then. Some people say you need to talk to Doug. We don't need to talk to Doug. Somebody needed to talk to Ed while he was alive.
Yeah.
Or did Ed talk to the FBI? Or did Ed talk to United States Attorney's Office? Or did Ed? You're going to hear here in a minute where Doug Asher says that Ed was upset because it was ruled homicide. And he wouldn't sign the death certificate. Well, who did he report that to? Because even though he didn't have no training or that we know of other than a funeral director, an embalmer, there's couple of licenses there. You get either an embalmer or you can get a funeral director. You can do both. But the coroner back then, just because the coroner ruled something or thought something, or the coroner's dead now, you're going to find out through Mr. Asher's book, or that chapter of his book, where he never names anybody. He says the higher ups in the state police, the heavies, the higher ups, the whatever he calls them,
higher ups mostly,
unless it's somebody that he knows or he thinks that has agreed with him, and then he remembers. He can tell you the date, the time, even 35 years ago, and tell you the time that it happened. But when it comes time to name these people, a member of the KSP command, you're going to hear that a lot through here. A member. You don't remember who these people was? You don't remember? We've been going through 3 sheets of names here. Who's deceased, who's alive, and who's we don't know.
Yeah.
The coroner, assistant medical examiner, and all of them ruled that it was self-inflicted. A member of the KSP command staff then made several attempts to influence those individuals' findings and decisions on the matter to no avail. Now, he's saying that the command staff, a member of the command staff, he doesn't say who. Doesn't say who. He's making a big allegation here against somebody. A member of the command staff committed a crime. A member of the command staff has tried to influence somebody, tried to influence those individuals' findings and decisions on the matter.
What individuals? The
to no
detectives?
avail. Well, he's talking about the detectives.
Okay.
Well, here's one that's ruled it a homicide, a murder. He says that all of them was unanimous.
Unanimous, yeah.
He says that to no avail. Well, Dr. Huntsinker says in a newspaper article back then, an interview, that he had never told nobody, nobody, that it was a S side.
Yep.
He tells last year, 2024, 2023 or 2024, he tells Lee Searcy, WLEX, that it was he had it ruled undetermined. That's why David Jones and George Nichols and other ones come in to check out and do other things, undetermined. And again, if something like this is undetermined, if you're going to foul up, if you're going to make a mistake, wouldn't you rather make a mistake and call it a homicide or undetermined even than a S side? Why are we so fast wanting to call this a S side? Why is that? A fellow
Good
trooper,
question.
an employee that Asher says, oh, he was a good trooper. Oh, I loved his mom and dad, good people. But we got to go with the truth. Well, the truth on the death certificate, the truth on this police report that we've got, the one detective, we'd like to see the entire file.
Yeah.
Or at least let some other detectives, some people look at it. And a member of the command staff that he doesn't name then made several attempts to influence those individuals' findings. Well, that's called coercion. That's called witness tampering. That's called, there's all kinds of names for it, that crimes that you could charge somebody with. Who did he go to report this? Because this is just one. You're going to hear this throughout. This is just one, the first time he mentions it. Who did he go to and try to get this person reported to? Who did he report them to? Did he go to the FBI? Did he go? I'm going to name these people throughout. United States Attorney's Office right here in Lexington. Did he go to Kentucky Attorney General's office? Did he go to the higher up? This was just a member of the command staff. Was it the top member? Was it the commissioner? Because if it wasn't the commissioner, did he go to the commissioner? We're going to discuss that in a minute. Let's let you see how because the commissioner at that time, acting commissioner, is still alive today. He's still alive. He could dispute if Asher would have said something about him, but when it comes to him, Asher says that Michael Troop did not have any law enforcement background. I do not believe he was in on the cover-up or fully understood the command staff's strategy. Now it's staffs, plural.
More than one.
Yes, more than one. But he's not blaming. He's not going to blame Michael Troop. That's the acting commissioner of state police during that time. He's not going to blame him. I wonder why. Have anything to do with Michael Troop being an attorney? He says he had no law enforcement experience. Well, he once, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I remember Michael Troop. I remember Michael Troop. I remember back in those days. I remember a lot of people because we dealt with a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember that name. But he was a United States attorney, if I remember correctly. So he may not have had law enforcement experience as far as working a case, but he had law enforcement experience as far as investigation and watching how they're done.
Okay.
It gets interesting, guys. Hang with us for
Yeah.
you CSI people. Make you some notes here because we want your questions at the end. We need your help on something. Findings and decisions to no avail. So he didn't change nobody's mind. This trooper didn't. This command staff to no avail. That means that if Dr. John Huntsinker called it a undetermined, he didn't change his mind. It was undetermined. When the Loyal County coroner refused to list the cause of death as homicide on the death certificate, that same command staffer took other steps to attempt to circumvent the truth behind the death until he finally succeeded in getting the chief medical examiner to list the cause of death as a homicide. Chief medical examiner. Why do we have a chief medical examiner? Why do we have a chief of police? Why do we have a chief of surgery? Why do we have a chief of anything? They're in charge. They're the chief. They have Indians underneath them. Dr. Huntsinker says he ruled it undetermined. He couldn't determine S-side or homicide or So when you can't determine and you've got another man that's done 10,000 autopsies, thousands of gunshots, why wouldn't the chief medical examiner or the state medical examiner, why wouldn't they step in and look at it, investigate it to see if there's something Dr. Huntsinker, the young Dr. Huntsinker, may have missed? Because see, again, we've said it in our other videos, when you have 3 or 4 troopers showing up at the coroner's office, funeral home, or at the autopsy, and these 2 or 3, 4 troopers are saying, self-inflicted, S-side. Well, that can influence, is a coroner, a county coroner that's a funeral home director, is he really going to go against 2 or 3? It used to say 4, but we know it's not 4 because William Stewart says it's a murder on his report.
Yeah.
So we know it's not 4. So we've still got Doug Asher, Johnny Phelps, and Larry Lewis. We don't know what Larry Lewis says. We haven't talked to Larry Lewis. We'd like to. If Larry Lewis felt that it was a S-side, we'd like to know why he didn't go before the insurance company paid out. Why he didn't go to the FBI or the state police or why didn't he go? I believe that's what Doug wrote in his book. My thoughts, my opinion, because we know that's not truth. We know it's not unanimous. So he went and got the chief medical examiner and he listed the cause of death as a homicide. Now, he listed that cause of death as a homicide after the state medical examiner, David Jones, had also reviewed the autopsy.
Okay.
After
Vincent DeMayo.
DeMayo, famous pathologist, done Lee Harvey Oswald, done movie stars left and right, well-renowned pathologist. And then Dr. George Nichols himself, the chief medical examiner, not counting the equivocal crew from the FBI that come in and done a suicide investigation to see if it fit the profile. Let's go on. The revelations contained in this chapter are in no way intended to defame the memory of Johnny Edgerton. Well, you sure could have fooled me. We discussed this in the first time you sure could have fooled us.
Yeah, that's sad.
The revelations contained in this chapter are in no way intended to defame the memory of Johnny Edgerton. I wonder if somebody wrote a book like this about Captain Doug Asher when he's deceased and comes out with a book that tells how he supervised, and after talking to some of these troopers that we've talked to when he was in charge at Post 11, I wonder if somebody wrote a book on him and then writes that in there, and then just say we in no way intend to defame the memory of Captain Doug Asher, but we want to tell you about stories that we've heard or things people have told us. Wow. By all accounts, he was a good trooper and a good man. Also a veteran. United States veteran, served in the Army. Even now, over 3 decades after his death, he remains sorely missed. His parents, Jack and Patty Edrington, were wonderfully kind people. After the death of Edrington, they became dear friends of Doug and his family and remained so until both their respective deaths. Bull crap. Bull crap. Not according to the family. That's not true. In fact, Doug Asher was removed, was not allowed to look at the case anymore after the shirt came up missing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not true. Guys, you can write anything you want to in a book after that person's dead. If you don't have some morals, if you don't have some character about you, you can say anything you want. I feel you, baby. And I'm trying to be nice.
Okay.
I am. I shouldn't. I've got to calm down. But I get so when I read that one right there where it says he was a good man and don't want to defame his memory, but you write a book and you say that a man committed homicide when there's a death certificate that says homicide. When all the evidence points to a homicide, why would you want to defame? That's nothing but to defame him, dishonor him, his memory, his character, in front of his grandchildren.
His family, yeah.
Wow. Maybe someday somebody will write a book on the Ashers. And hopefully they'll be more fair with them, because Mr. Asher, Captain Asher, Colonel Asher, has a son called Doug Asher. And I think he helped write this book with his dad. He, at one time, for a little while, we won't get into that, but for a little while, he was also a Kentucky State Trooper.
Okay.
All righty. This chapter is, however, intended to expose the cover-up perpetrated by some of the then sitting command staff and explain the steps Doug has taken both at the time of Edrington's death and recently to bring the situation to light. Now, this must be the younger Doug that helped his dad write the book, because I thought he was talking in third person to begin with. We first read the book. We wasn't aware of the one time, for a short while, state trooper son, or now works for Governor Andy Beshear in Frankfort, which may help to explain why the case has not been reopened.
Okay.
My mind wanders, guys. It's a good thing I don't say sometimes what I am thinking, but she's beating me. My knee is...
There you go. Quit ratting me out.
Don't mean to say nothing, and I'm trying not to say nothing that's not true. I'm trying not to say anything that's...
Yeah.
I don't want to be like Mr. Asher here.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
But this chapter is certainly misleading, and I'm probably the last person you'll ever see to take up for the Kentucky State Police. I've known some wonderful Kentucky State Police in 40 years, and I've also known some corrupt ones.
There's good and bad in everything.
And there's good and bad in everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd probably be the last one to take up for the Kentucky State Police, unless the truth is there, unless there's something. And some of these troopers that he talks about that's been in the command staff, to me, I knew, they're now deceased, but I knew them over the last 40 years. And I'd put their reputation and character up against Mr. Asher's anytime, from what I knew of them firsthand. And again, anybody that's followed us knows we gave up our jobs for standing up for what's right. So if I don't believe it, I wouldn't speak it. But let's go on. Doug believes all the individuals involved in the death investigation, as well as the remaining members of Edrington's family, deserve closure in this matter.
Absolutely.
Guys, they deserved closure 35 years ago, 36 years ago now. They deserved closure then. You wait 35 years, you draw a salary for the next 30 years, you're drawing big retirement from the Kentucky State Police. And now you think the family needs closure? No, the family now has grandchildren that they have to try to explain to the grandchildren about their grandpa, who was an honorable trooper, an honorable United States veteran, military veteran. You know, and I mentioned in the last video, and I'm just going to briefly touch on it, but Doug is down on the command staff. Before Doug Asher retired, he was the command staff in Frankfurt. He was the command staff in Frankfurt. Even though he didn't do nothing 35 years ago to go to the FBI, to go to the media, what did he do when he became part of the command staff, where he's up there in the higher echelon, where he can say, hey guys, now that I'm up here, I want to reopen the Johnny Edrington case. I want to prove that this is a S side. Did he do it? He's the command staff now. Didn't do it. Waited till he retired, wrote a book on it. Slandered. What I feel, my opinion. I think he slandered because we've got a death certificate that says homicide. And he says here that this man committed suicide. So maybe he's got some proof. Maybe he's got a video. He's got a note. He's got a witness that can say, because other than that, I think he slandered himself. I think he libeled himself. My opinion. I'm not a lawyer. Didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn last night, but the following is Doug's first person account of the cover-up of Johnny Edrington's true cause of death, as well as the steps he continues to take to correct, taken from his extensive personal notes regarding the investigation. Did he take those notes to the FBI, to the U.S. Attorney's Office? In December 1988, I was captain with the Kentucky State Police and assigned as commander of KSP Post 11 in London, Kentucky. On the night of December the 20th, 1988, Trooper Johnny Edrington died from a gunshot wound from his issued sidearm. Not unusual. Most police officers that's killed or in the line of duty are killed with their own gun. And in traffic stops. That's the two
major.
Yeah. After several unsuccessful attempts by KSP dispatcher to contact Edrington over the radio, Trooper Earl Beatty went in search of him. Beatty discovered Edrington's cruiser and subsequently his body. Edrington's body was lying in a ditch near the front of his cruiser. Front of his cruiser. If you're a police officer and you made a traffic stop, you wouldn't go to the back of your cruiser, would you? You'd go towards the front of your cruiser. And if you got somebody out of that truck or car and you wanted to give them a field sobriety test, or somebody you knew and you wanted to talk to them, even though that road wasn't that well traveled like it is now, you would still probably walk back between the two vehicles in front of your vehicle. You would take them, you wouldn't stand out on the side of Route 80. You would bring them back at the trunk of their car and at the hood of your car.
So you'd be in front of their lights so you could see.
You'd be in front of the lights. You could see them. Again, we think this was somebody he knew. We think it was either an informant, somebody he knew. He knew these people. We've been told that somebody that was in that truck that he supposedly stopped when the truck driver saw him turn around and go after him, a speeding truck. Sorry, guys. Lying in a ditch. About where that cross is at, Sheila and I put up. If you ever drive by there, you'll see a cross there now.
Mm-hmm.
Near the front of his cruiser, Lowell County Coroner Ed Bowling and his son Doug Bowling responded to the scene, which was in Lowell County, approximately 2.4 miles east of the Pulaski County line on Kentucky 80. When I received a call informing me of the situation, I was out of state visiting family. See, it was almost Christmas time. This was December the 20th, so he was probably out of town for the holidays. It would take me approximately 3 hours to make the trip back to Post 11. Prior to my arrival, a member of the KSP command staff had already come and gone, but not before trying to intimidate the investigators about how this case should go. You know, he says in his TV interview with Lee Searcy, he says there that the command staff told them, said, if anybody at this post believes that this is anything other than a homicide,
you shouldn't be here.
They don't need to be working
here.
Yep. Doug continued to work there for years. These detectives continued to work there for years. But he says in that interview, remember the command staff had already been there, come and gone. Several officers would be involved in this extensive investigation. Extensive investigation, guys. Trooper, Kentucky State Trooper, and I'm not bad-mouthing nobody. We're going to discuss this at the end of this video, but Trooper Jimmy Phelps says on a Facebook post, referring to a video we made and different things, and we've been conferring back and forth, but he says that it was decided that night that it was a S side. Several officers would be involved in extensive investigation, decided that night. Let's listen here. However, the primary KSP investigators were detectives Lieutenant William Stewart,
which is who filled the report out
homicide, murder. William Stewart, detective. William Stewart, Detective Johnny Phelps, and Detective Larry Lewis. Those investigators were, in my opinion, among the very best and most competent in the entire state of Kentucky. That's great. That's great. Sounds like Doug Asher and those three troopers got along real well. He sure gave them a compliment. I don't understand 36 years later. I honestly believe that if Sheila and I had that file, I'm not bragging. I guess I am. I don't mean to brag if I am, because it's the good Lord that if this case is ever solved after 36 years, it'll be the good Lord. But I believe a person could take that case file and had access to talk to some people. I believe we could solve this case. When I arrived at the post a few hours after the body had been discovered, I asked the detectives their opinions based on the evidence thus far on what had happened. They unanimously agreed. Now, Doug Asher says that he met with Detective Johnny Phelps, Detective Larry Lewis, and Detective Lieutenant William Stewart, and they all unanimously agreed. Murder. Stewart. I can't emphasize it enough. That's not unanimous, guys. If that report is falsified, that's a crime that a detective that he's not going to do. That man right there didn't feel that it was an S side, or he wouldn't have filled that report out as a homicide.
They didn't otherwise, yeah.
And this was on 12/21, the date, 12/21/88. She'll show the form. Look down at the main bottom of it.
I'll post it.
And you'll see 12/21/88, the very day, 20 plus hours spent, no doubt, because they traveled to California. He did, and he went here and there, but some of these guys didn't want to go as far as the Kentucky State Penitentiary to talk to Robert Foley. But let's go on.
Okay.
Those investigators were, in my opinion, among the best. When I arrived at the post, they unanimously agreed without hesitation that Johnny Edrington had committed S-side. Now, let's listen right here a minute. I want to go back to one thing. Several officers were involved. Investigators, very best, competent. Somewhere in here, he talks about all the evidence. When I arrived at the post and discovered, I asked the detectives their opinion based on the evidence thus far of what happened. Based on the evidence thus far?
Mm-hmm.
Thus far, the only evidence was that Johnny Edrington's laying on the side of the road dead. In that report there, they talk about scratch marks been taken off on the highway. The truck driver says he's seen the trooper turn on a truck.
Mm-hmm.
There was a stolen truck out of Somerset that very evening, that very night.
Mm-hmm. Dents in the hood.
Dents in the hood, but no struggle, some of them says. But in his report, he says there was a struggle. There's damage to the vehicle that points toward a struggle. But I asked the detectives what the evidence. The only evidence was that he had a gun in his hand. He's laying on the side of the road dead. YouTube. Homicides made to look like suicides. YouTube it. Google it. All the evidence pointed toward that. I want to know what the other evidence was, Mr. Asher. What is the other evidence? He doesn't say overwhelming yet. Over here in the book later on, he's going to say overwhelming evidence of an S-side. We don't even see evidence. We see where somebody has placed the gun in the wrong hand of a man. They got off where they were looking at him and their right hand's here. They're thinking that's his right hand, but you're off. You're looking in the opposite direction. They put the gun in the wrong hand. They even pointed the gun at him. They made it so
obvious.
It's anything but
it's two-stage
S-side. Mm-hmm. Among other evidence indicating this was a S-side, when Edrington's body was discovered, his revolver was still in his left hand. The barrel was pointed toward his body. I don't have a fake one up here, but imagine taking your gun, falling back, and the gun is still in your hand, a .357 Magnum, hollow point bullets, second most powerful handgun at the time. 44 was most powerful. And the gun didn't even recoil out of his hand. Now, when you die, you go limp. There's no muscle. You don't say, well, I'll hold on to this till I hit the ground, or I'm going to. When you do that, your brain is dead and you everything go limp, and whatever you've got is going to, it fell. It fell. It didn't fall in his hand. It didn't fall pointing toward him in his hand. If you all believe that, you probably need to watch somebody else's video, because I feel you, but you're not going to agree. If you believe that, don't worry about Fred's attitude, personality, obnoxious, whatever you want to call me, old man with an attitude, or if you all believe that, you're not looking at the evidence. Don't look at me or Sheila. Look at the evidence and
listen
think to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what we're saying and see if you buy into this. If you do, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not looking at it correctly, Sheila and I. Still in his left hand. He's right-handed, guys. Gun wouldn't have been in his left hand. Gun would have been in his right hand.
All right.
This indicated he had held the gun in his left hand and pulled the trigger with his right thumb. Later, investigators would conduct an experiment which concluded Based upon the recoil of the gun and other factors, the position of Edrington's revolver in his left hand was consistent with that scenario. We'd like to see it. We'd like to know who done this scientific test. We'd like to know how they done it, what
Right.
they done.
What did the test consist of?
Why would he have the gun in his left hand if he's right-handed? How the gun's recoil, he says, investigators would conduct based on the recoil of the gun. Based on the recoil of the gun, guys, take either hand backwards, hold the gun over here, and pull that, pull your hammer back, or ever how you want to do it, and pull that trigger with your thumb or over here, either one, and watch and see if it doesn't break your wrist, probably the recoil. See, did they even look? Me and Sheila's never discussed that. Was his wrist fractured?
From the recoil?
What? There was somebody on one of these pages the other day or on Sheila's channel and on a video, and they said maybe they need to do another autopsy on Johnny. I don't know, after 36 years, according to how well he was embalmed and different things, but I'd like to know if either one of his wrists had a fracture in it, even a hairline fracture, where the recoil and him holding it backwards, if that happened. And I would say that's probably what not Huntsinger, but DeMayo, Dr. George Nichols, Dr. David Jones, that's things they probably actually looked at. I'm probably behind that. I'm not a medical examiner, but that would be interesting. I just now thought about it while we were talking.
That is interesting.
We'd like to know what kind of test he performed. Wouldn't you guys? Wouldn't you like to see Mr. Asher stand up and show us all? We done this, we done that. Hold the gun. Let's see you fire it. Let's see you fire it and see what happens to the gun. Let's see if you can hold on to that gun and you alive backwards. And you alive, much less dead. You can't hold a .357 Magnum shooting it backwards.
One-handed?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, because one of them's just pushing the trigger.
Right.
So you're just holding the gun with the left hand. He's saying the right one, all the right one done, he took the right finger, thumb and pushed the trigger is what he said. So you're holding it with your left hand backwards, and it ain't going to come out of your hand. Anybody that's ever shot .357 Magnums plus P rounds, which is what we carried back in them days, they know. The next morning, Tuesday, December the 21st, 1988, at 8:30 a.m., I arrived at Boland Funeral Home in London, Kentucky. The body had already been placed in the hearse to be transported for an autopsy. I opened the back door of the vehicle and entered where the body was located. I unzipped the body bag and observed that Edrington's uniform was in perfect order. There were no signs indicating he had been involved in any type of physical struggle. I observed a single gunshot wound located to his forehead, an inch above the brim of his nose, and dead center, eye level. Was it eye level? Johnny Edrington, I think, was six foot something. Was it eye level? How do we know?
Eye level to who?
How do we know? Because the bullet was taken out by a funeral director. A funeral director had removed a bullet out of the back of his head. Now, was that bullet protruding out of the back of his head, going upward, where a shorter guy had shot him at an angle? Was it somebody the same size that shot directly straight across? He says here, eye level.
Yeah.
How does Trooper Asher know eye level? There's a hole there. What's the direction of travel? See, you can take a dowel rod or different things and stick in there, and it will follow the easiest route and probably come right out the back of his head. Did it go upward? Did it go to the left or right? If he's shooting left-handed with his offhand, surely he didn't have that good of control of. Nobody's as good with their left hand if you're or your offhand as you are with your good one. Go ahead, babe. I'm listening.
Oh, I just did that. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. If it's supposedly in his left hand, it wouldn't have been as straight or
Well, the bullet.
accurate. Yeah.
The bullet would have been nice to left the bullet in his head where they could, the medical examiner, maybe Huntsinker could have, instead of undetermined, maybe he could have said, hey, this was shot by a short guy. This was going up. It's come out the top of his head. This was a taller guy. This guy must have been 6'4" because the bullet's going down. Now, we were told that the person got the drop on him. Another guy got out with a gun and reached over and got his gun and shot him right between the eyes. That's what we were told.
Interesting.
Where's the state police? Where's the detectives? We've done, somebody said 30 videos. We don't know these people. We just know what people tells us, that they called the state police 36 years ago and told the head of the state police this same story, but no detectives came and talked to them or questioned them about what they told. Why is that? Could it be because it was already ruled a S side and they didn't want to be embarrassed? I don't rule that out. Police officers, why does anybody want to be a cop? Why does anybody want to be a police officer? Why does anybody want to, you like that prestige. You like that. You like knowing what's going on. You like being a part of things. Of course, we want to, it used to be
helpful.
Of course, it used to be to be helpful. It used to be to protect and serve. Get the drugs off the street, get the crime, get people that, wow, it's anything but that now. Now it's beat up and shoot. That's the motto nowadays. Cops can't beat you up fast enough or shoot you fast enough anymore. I seen a picture the other day of a police department, a guy and a girl standing there, and it looks like they're in the worst mood. It looks like they're ready to just kick somebody's butt. And I'm thinking, what happened to the friendly faces of sheriff's department, police departments? You don't have to look like you're in the Gestapo or something. You're there to help and smile.
But children aren't supposed to fear police officers. That's who they're told as a child. You know, if you see a police officer, go to him for help. You don't want him to be afraid.
Unzipped the body bag and no physical, nothing physical. I observed a single gunshot wound to the head, brim of the nose, and dead center, eye level.
That's what I'm saying.
Wow. Maybe it was obvious the muzzle blast was from a .357 revolver, had occurred at close range. It was contact or near contact wound. The muzzle of the revolver had been touching or very close to touching his forehead at the time of the weapon had been fired. There was massive trauma to the head caused by the significantly large muzzle blast. .357 Magnum, no doubt there was head trauma. If there was at that time, it was the opinion of the coroner that Edrington had died of self-inflicted gunshot wound. Guys, you got to remember, once again, unless I'm incorrect, and if I am, please correct me, somebody in the comments. If the coroner, Mr. Ed Bowling, and I don't know him, didn't know him, probably one of the finest fellows ever lived in Laurel County. I'm not trying to do like Mr. Asher did and defame anybody, but was he a physician? Was he a doctor? Was he a certified medical examiner? Or was he simply a funeral home director / embalmer? Big difference. Big difference. Coroners back then were elected to that position. I can't emphasize that enough. They were elected. It's like telling me right now, it's like those girls that's supposed to went to outer space and they're astronauts. Yeah, because they went up on a circus, a carnival ride, and come back down. They're astronauts. See, that don't make you an astronaut. Because you're a funeral director doesn't make you a medical examiner. It makes you a funeral director.
Now, you called him a funeral director / embalmer. Did you?
There's two certifications.
Okay,
there's two things. You can be a funeral director and just take care of funerals, or you can be a certified embalmer, and that's another That's another
Degree
certification.
or-
Or it used to be. I think I'm correct. I could be
Okay.
wrong. I know this
Just
because
curious.
once upon a time that was going to be a field I thought about going into.
Mm. We hope you're having a great evening, guys. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. And we'll catch you on the next one. God bless.
God bless you guys. God bless everybody. And that's it.
Okay. Bye.
Babe.